You can have players who are seriously engaged get pissed off because they see with someone who's not so engaged.
I have thus far gotten away with never having to have a conversation with myself. And if I start narrating scenes where the players aren't there, I might have to start doing that.
How do you determine when to end a D&D session?
Yeah, this I thought was a pretty interesting question. What I've found over the years is, and I've been doing this a long time, I found two cutoff points. One is usually somewhere between 2 and 3 hours. I feel like I start to see people's attention fade. No matter what we're doing, no matter how interesting it is, if you have 3 to 5 players at your table, one of them after 2 hours plus, in my opinion, you're going to lose somebody. Effectively, they start looking around. Just the attention. Now, I'm not talking about someone with ADHD, right? Just normal people. 2 hours, I think you're starting at it. So I try to have a 3-hour limit because I think that's still doable. Even if I'm kind of losing one person, it's okay. But I also find that even after we've been playing, say, for an hour and a half to that 2-hour limit, if we also do like a really big climactic battle and it's over, I like to end it there because what comes next might be a little bit of a letdown or a come down, and I feel like that's better saved for the next session than to just extend the session. I feel like that gets a little boring for people. Right after the big fight, they get the big loot, they divide it up, they're all excited, and then if you go to something mundane, I feel like you start to lose them right away. So sometimes, even after an hour and a half, I might end the session if we've done something really big and climactic that I feel has drained people, a tense battle, or whatever the encounter is. We move the story along. Then I don't want them to be bored afterwards. So sometimes the session will be a little shorter. But going longer than 3 hours, I've done 6-hour sessions too. And I find I'm looking at the players and I feel like that last hour or two, half of them aren't having fun anymore. You always have 1 or 2 people who you could probably go all day and they love it, right? They don't want to leave the fantasy world, right? And when I play, I'm like that. I could play all day. But most people I don't think are like that. And I think you have to watch your players, and as soon as you feel like you're starting to lose them at all, you have to think about ending the session, no matter, it doesn't even matter how long it's been going on. You don't want your players to not have fun, because that's the whole point of it, right? So I think you just have to watch your players, watch their body language, see what they're starting to do, if they're starting to do stuff a little out of character, or roles are happening they're not even watching anymore. You get these little indicators that they're done. And I think when you start to see that, you have to step back and say, okay, maybe it's time to just, end this somehow at a good point and not drag it out and, and ruin the night.
Yeah, that was a fantastic answer there, Greg. I totally agree on the watching your players, being able to read the crowd, so to speak, and seeing that they're getting exhausted. I also prefer like a 2 or 3 hour time limit, but I play once a month with my brother and stuff, and we go through so many rules and stuff because it's all new. Everybody's new to the game. It usually goes into the 4 to 5 hour zone, but I'm able to do that because I don't like to extend my games past what I have prepared. And usually when I do play the 4 or 5 hours, I can keep going because I still have stuff prepared because we didn't get to it yet because we were going along very slowly. With that in mind, if I'm playing a game and I prepare for 3 hours, we get it knocked down in 2, we're going to cut it off at 2 because I don't want to go too far beyond that. I also find that if another good point to cut something off is if you need to do more research on something. Let's say the players do something just totally unexpected and they find it, be like, they kill this dragon. Let's just say they kill this dragon. Like, what's in the treasure hoard? Well, number one, you didn't think they were going to kill the dragon. You thought they were going to maybe negotiate with it or whatnot, or work with it or whatever else, and decided, hey, we're having combat and stuff. Now you got to figure out all this treasure hoard rather than just going off the cuff. I would rather be like, okay, we're going to end there, and then we'll come back, next week or whatever, and we can go through everything that you found. That way, it gives me a little bit of time, and I don't just randomly throw out stuff that is either underwhelming or overwhelming. And then the third thing that I would probably say is I think as a DM, we can feel that point when we're done. We can feel it, just like we're trying to either speed through combat or our descriptions are getting worse, and we're just like at the beginning we're like describing things really vividly and stuff. You walk into another room with a door. What do you want to do? When you start getting to that point, you're mentally exhausted and everything. So I think it's best for yourself to keep as a DM, to keep your own interest in the game and to keep your own mind fresh is to realize when you yourself is exhausted. So I think a lot of this is just going to come with experience, but I would be careful just going any further than what you have planned. I think that's the big one. Just don't extend past too much of what you had planned for this session, because unless you do it all the time and you're good at improving and stuff, it can get a little bit more difficult, and it might not turn out as well as you thought.
So I will disagree with everyone now, in that I have basically my entire DM career, I have sort of played off of the idea of like I'll end it at like the closest milestone to 4 hours, and I did that for every campaign I've ever run, except my most recent one, which was my first one that I did like purely on a virtual tabletop. And since I found that energy levels seem to be a lot lower, I think, in games like that compared to real life games, I decided to go off of the rule that when I see people get tired, we will end the session there. And it was good for keeping people participating, but the thing that I didn't like, to the point where I will probably never do that policy again, is the fact that it took so long to get anything done in the campaign. It took so many sessions to get anywhere. We were playing for a year. It can be hard to keep a D&D group intact for more than a year at a time. And if you're not making some real progress every session, the campaign never has a realistic chance, in my experience, of getting finished. So in my mind, having one or two people tuned out for an extra like hour and a half compared to what they might prefer is the lesser evil compared to not being able to finish all the story goals. That's my 2 cents anyway.
This is going to be interesting. Okay. How do I determine when I end the D&D session? Well, I'm just going to talk about my experience and what I do, because that's all I really care about. I don't really care about what other people do at their table. That's your business. I stop when I get tired, and and if I just want to stop because I'm not tired, then that's when I stop. It's like I just pick the point that I want to stop, and generally with my home group, and we've been playing a long time, like many years, so we keep coming back. We've played many campaigns. Almost everybody's dungeon mastered in this group, apart from I think 1 or 2, and there's 6 of us. And so we will usually play from about 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. because that's the time we have, and we play for usually about 3 hours. But when I say we play for 3 hours, we don't really play through 3 hours, okay? Usually we have a break in the middle. So at about 8:30, after about an hour and a half, we need to take a break. And the assumption is that most people will show up in the first 15 minutes, but that doesn't necessarily happen. So we could wind up to just catching up and talking about everyday life and what's going on, or one of my friends who's into history will go off on a tangent that is hard to get him back off that tangent, because he's into history and so forth, and he likes to talk, like many of us in that group, unfortunately. So 3 hours is the allocated time, but the time we spend actually playing the game is different, because we're waiting for people to arrive and so forth. And we're playing over Zoom rather than in person. I would prefer in person, but we're playing over Zoom because there's a lot of people who have elderly family members, so we're trying to keep them alive a little bit longer. So that's sort of my approach to that. But if I feel sick, I stop the session. If I feel tired, I just say, look, I'm tired, I'm going to leave. If I'm the DM, that means everybody has to stop. If I'm not the DM, then that means I'll see you guys next week. I can't do any more. And I've done that quite a bit recently. I certainly, if everybody says, oh, we're tired and we want to stop, then I would stop. I've done that as well. If we get to 10 o'clock, we just stop. I don't even worry too much about where we are in the story. And most of us are doing the same thing. All the other people who are DMing I know Simon's doing, we get to 10 o'clock, we'll stop here. This is fine. I don't mind finishing on a cliffhanger if we get a cliffhanger, but not always. It doesn't always sort of work that way. It's nice if you do, because it's hopefully a way of the people will remember what happened last week. Because sometimes it's 10 o'clock and everybody's had a long week, and you're like, and somebody says, well, the DM usually says, does somebody want to do the recap? Because this is the ongoing thing in our group, is like the dungeon master doesn't do the recap, the players do the recap, and there's like, do I remember what happened? So it's nice if you do have like a cliffhanger and somebody's about to perish or something like that. And it's also nice, we've got a couple of players who like to collect cursed magic items and cause trouble with the role play that they do, and get our group into even more trouble than it was before through their role play. And it's always nice to stop at that point, because it's very easy to remember, like, our captain has got us in the shit again, so we're going to have to stop right there, because who knows how long that will take to play out. Or one of my friends, he loves collecting cursed magic items, and trying to get them off him is very difficult. So you're like, well, what have you currently got going on your character? So yeah, so I don't have like a set rule. It's all over the place. I don't know how useful this is to people, I mean, frankly.
I'm actually going to agree with Greg most of all. I think the most important thing is you're supposed to be having fun when you play the game, and it's hard to have fun if you're tired. So whenever I'm running a game, whenever I'm even designing sessions, I will keep that first in mind, and I want to make sure that everybody at the table is still enjoying themselves. And if someone is starting to get tired, I'll say, okay, we should start wrapping it up so we can, still want to come back next time. If everyone does want to keep going, or I'm the one that's starting to get tired, I will do my best to end it on a cliffhanger to make the players want to keep playing. Like if someone says, no, I want to keep playing, that's a compliment to me. It means I ended it and they're going to want to schedule the next one as soon as possible. Because most of the games I play go, a month or two before the next session. So I want to make that time as short as it can be, so we can, like Fred said, remember what happened last time. Even if we end like on a long rest and it's a perfect ending point, we just had a long day of adventuring, I will hint at what's coming next in like some player's backstory. Like I'll describe the warlock's patron will come to them in a dream and tell them some vague and mysterious lines, and everyone's going to be like, I'm confused and I want to know more right now. Well, too bad. We're going to end it there. That's what I try to do when I decide when to end sessions. First, if someone's tired, end it. Second, if you can, end it on a cliffhanger. And with that, I will open it up to the panel.
I'd like to throw in a couple things. I think, one, just listening to everybody's stories, I think it's just a lot of it depends on yourself and your friends that you play with. And I think the longer that you're with a group, or the more that you've played with your current group, the more you're going to know each other. You're going to know and see signs and stuff like that. So it is going to be a little bit harder to end a session when you're playing with folks that you haven't played a lot of time with. The second thing, definitely not related. This is something I nearly forgot about, but it's a lot of fun, so I wanted to share it with you. And my Tuesday night play group, my friend Jesse started DMing Wild Beyond the Witchlight for us, and we played about 2 or 3 sessions. And one of the things that he likes to do, and this is definitely, if you're good at improv, this is something that would be fun, is occasionally, if you don't have a cliffhanger to end your game on, he likes to have each player name one of their skills off of their character, and he'll give them like a little piece of information off of that skill. So like when they end the game, like we're in this carnival or whatnot, and if I would have said Arcana, he would have gave my character something to do with, I would have maybe noticed something magical or seen something magical, or if someone would have said religion, then they would have maybe would have noticed something that pertained to DD or something. And I thought that was really, I had never heard of that before. It was pretty unique. I'd like to try it myself, but I don't think I'm at that point yet where I could improv for 4 different players, as far as, you know, giving them each something based off of a skill that they chose and throw at me. But it's definitely something to consider, especially if you want to end, if you don't have a cliffhanger to end on, you want to end on with something that'll keep your players thinking until the next game.
That's actually really cool, because that essentially provides each player with a question that they want to hopefully answer, I mean, if they buy into it. And then, of course, they have to come back next week to make sure, or next month or next fortnight, to actually find out what's going on. Because that'll be the first thing they'll be going for, is like that little clue that may lead somewhere or nowhere is what they want to explore. I kind of view a lot of Dungeons and Dragons are like not so much a movie or a book, but more like a TV series. You know the if you can duplicate a lot of the stuff they do in a TV series, or the books, not the what do you call it now? I used to call them comics, like comic books, right? Comic books where they would always have to be continued next week. The story never ends, much like Dungeons and Dragons until the fat lady sings, but and it does actually end. But often it's got this sort of ongoing sort of story, and you don't know until what happens next week. So if you can kind of do something like that at the end of your adventure session, then I'll probably, you know, and there's lots of different ways of doing it, because there's lots of different strategies used by TV series and comic books. Then you're probably more likely for your players to remember what happened, so and also be more invested in finding out what's going on. So instead of flobbing you off and deciding to go get pissed with the mates or the girlfriends and so forth, and have a heavy night or do something else, they will actually show up to your D&D session.
I'm going to spin it back to the original question. One of the other reasons I monitor, I think, the body language of the players and the player dynamics in ending a session is the one thing you don't want is you have someone who's becoming disengaged. You don't want other people getting mad at them also. So that's one of the reasons when I see that start to happen, I end the session, because depending on your group, how tight it is and the personalities, you can have players who are seriously engaged get pissed off because they see with someone who's not so engaged. So that's all. When I see the fatigue setting in, I'd rather cut the session early than those possible dynamics playing out and having players get mad at each other, which is absolutely the last thing you want in your group, right? So depending on your group and the makeup and the personalities, that's another, I think, factor you have to look at when you're deciding when to end the session.
I've had that happen before, where one of the players was just like scrolling, like 2 hours in, they're scrolling through their phone or everything else. Everybody else is like fighting and stuff, and we had to like remind them as their turn and everything else. So yeah, hard to agree. I want to throw in one more thing, if you don't mind. It looks like we're running pretty early, so this is more about ending a session than when to end a session. And Fred's last few comments kind of reminded me of this. I was watching Mark Humes. He runs Nights of Evening Stars on the Dungeons and Dragons YouTube channel, and every once in a while, going back to like the cliffhanger thing, he'll throw in a scene from the third person. So instead of nothing to do with the players or the characters, but he'll like do, you know, like their game's over with, but then he'll throw in a scene that's like, way far away in this, you know, this small town, in this, you know, this building or whatnot. There's this, the villains like mixing some things together or having a conversation with like an NPC that they thought was on their side, which I thought was really cool. It's like storytelling. It is like, I think Fred mentioned like a movie and stuff like that. So it's like a movie where you would see that scene separate at the end, like, oh, I can't believe the villain's up to that kind of thing, and then it would like fade out to black. But of course, if you're going to do something like that, though, you have to be able to have players that are able to separate that knowledge from what their characters have. So
no, I'm a fan of that. I've seen it done in a couple of different actual plays where the DM will describe scene happening where the players aren't, for use it as a plot device or make them more interested somehow. I also haven't tried it myself. It seems difficult, but I don't know. I'll probably give it a shot someday.
But if I do something like that, I do it, they see it in a scrying pool or someone shows them the vision, because I don't like the idea of my players seeing a scene that they're not there, because then that's pulling them out of the game, because they're viewing it as themselves, not as their characters. If you mix it into the world, then they can view it through their character's eyes and stay in role, as opposed to breaking the fourth wall and be like, you guys see this happening in a far off town.
I think it's a great idea overall. The only thing for me in terms of doing a scene like that is, up till now, I have managed to, over my 15 years DMing, I have thus far gotten away with never having to have a conversation with myself. And if I start narrating scenes where the players aren't there, I might have to start doing that.
Hey folks, Wally DM here. I have a YouTube channel that's focused on puzzles and traps, and I wrote a book about it. You can find it on DriveThruRPG.
Hi, I am William SRD. I have a YouTube channel in which right now I'm mostly focused in playing and reviewing all of the worst Dungeons & Dragons video games.
Hey, I'm Greg. I'm a 3D printing pro on YouTube, and I specialize in printing 3D miniatures for use in Dungeons & Dragons and other war games.
Hi, my name is Fred Wheeler. I run the How to D&D YouTube channel. I do anything around players and dungeon masters playing Dungeons & Dragons, and I run classes live on the channel now.
If you are a viewer and you're meeting someone new for the first time, go check them out. I'll have all their links in the description.